Tonight, on Gay Timeline, we are turning back the clock to the lower decks of a British slave ship crossing the Atlantic in 1796. The air is thick with salt and blood and human waste. Men lie chained shoulder to shoulder in the dark, their bodies pressed so close they can feel each other's heartbeats. Above them, the ocean stretches for 3,000 miles. Below them, wooden planks and nothing else. Some of these men were warriors, some were farmers, some were husbands and fathers, and some, though history tried very hard not to write this down, were men who loved other men. They had no word for what they were, but they had each other. And tonight, we say their names out loud, because they could not. I am Julian, and this is Gay Timeline, the channel that brings forgotten gay history back into the light, one quiet night at a time. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you are tuning in from, and what time it is for you. It is always fascinating to see who is joining us from around the world. For most of history, these men were alone. They wrote letters no one would read. They loved in rooms no one would visit. Tonight, we keep them company. That is all sleep needs to be, a quiet act of refusing to let someone be forgotten. Have you ever wondered what it was like to fall in love while chained in the belly of a ship? Have you ever wondered who held whose hand in the dark when the screaming started? Have you ever wondered what happened to the men who loved men when they were stolen from West Africa and forced across an ocean they had never seen? What did they whisper to each other when the sailors were not listening? How did they survive when survival itself seemed impossible? What became of their love when everything else was taken from them? And who remembered their names when the ship finally reached land? Congratulations! You have just been captured by slavers on the coast of what the British call the Gold Coast in the year 1796. You are 23 years old. You speak Akan. You have never seen the ocean before last week. You are about to spend the next 8 weeks chained in a space 4 feet high, lying on bare wood, surrounded by 300 other men who are just as terrified as you are. Some of them will die before you reach Barbados. Some of them will go mad. And some of them, against all logic, against all odds, will find a way to hold on to their humanity by holding on to each other. Let us see if you can survive. Good luck. The ship is called the Sally, British Registry. Captain's name is Thomas Morris. The ship's surgeon keeps a logbook where he records the deaths, dysentery, fever, what he calls melancholia, but what we would recognize as acute trauma and despair. The Sally left Cape Coast Castle on June 14, 1796, carrying 342 enslaved people. By the time it reached Bridgetown 8 weeks later, 41 of them were dead. The historian Marcus Rediker spent years in the archives of British maritime records, reading these surgeons' logs. He found that the average death rate on Middle Passage voyages between 1780 and 1808 was about 15%. Some ships lost half. The sailors called it wastage. The insurance companies called it acceptable loss. The captains called it part of doing business. The men in the hold had no word for it at all because they were too busy trying to breathe. You are lying on your right side. You have been lying on your right side for 6 days. The shackles around your ankles connect you to the man beside you, whose name you learned on the second night. His name is Kofi. He was born on a Friday. You can tell because that is what Kofi means in Akan, born on Friday. Your own name is Kwame, born on a Saturday. You were both captured in the same raid, a night attack on your village by men working for the British factors at the coast. Kofi's wife was killed in the raid. You saw it happen. You have not spoken of it since. There are things too large for words, even when words are all you have left. The ship's hold is divided into sections. Men on one side, women on the other. Children crammed into the spaces in between. The ceiling height in the men's section is exactly 4 feet and 2 inches. Rediker measured this from surviving ship blueprints. 4 feet and 2 inches. You cannot sit upright. You cannot turn over unless the man you are chained to turns with you, and even then there is barely room. The air smells like a slaughterhouse in summer. Human waste runs between the planks and collects in the bilge below, sloshing back and forth with the rhythm of the waves. Twice a day the sailors come down with buckets and vinegar, swabbing the floors in a performance of hygiene that does nothing at all. The smell does not leave. It gets into your skin. It gets into your lungs. After a week, you stop noticing it, which is somehow worse than noticing. Kofi speaks to you in the dark. His voice is quiet. He asks if you have family waiting for you. You tell him no. Your mother is dead. Your father is old. You had a sister, but she married a man from another village, and you have not seen her in 2 years. Kofi nods, though you cannot see him nod in the blackness. He asks if you had a wife. You pause. The pause is long enough that he understands. He does not ask again. Instead, he shifts his body slightly so that his shoulder presses against yours. It is the smallest gesture. In another context, it would mean nothing. Here, it means everything. There is a word in Akan for men who love men, though it is not a word you would say in public. The word is kwabena nkonkonsa, which means something close to men who lie with men, but carries connotations that depend entirely on tone and context. In some regions it is an insult. In others it is merely descriptive. In your own village it was something known but not discussed, like the fact that the chief's youngest son never married, or that 2 farmers on the eastern edge lived together in the same compound for 30 years, and no one asked why. You never said the word aloud. You never had to. The man you loved, his name was Yor, born on a Thursday, understood, without needing the language. You would meet him in the forest beyond the fields. You would lie together under the mahogany trees. You would return to the village separately, and no one said a word, and life continued. Until the night the raiders came, and Yor ran west while you ran east, and you have not seen him since. You do not know if he is alive. You do not know if you will ever know. Kofi's hand finds yours in the dark. His palm is rough, calloused from farm work. He does not say anything. He does not need to. You hold his hand, and you feel the warmth of another human being, and for 10 seconds, you are not cargo. You are not inventory. You are 2 men holding hands in the dark, and that is an act of rebellion so quiet that no one on this ship will ever write it down. But it happened. And we remember. The middle passage was a graveyard, but it was also, impossibly, a place where people fell in love. The records are scattered. Ship manifests do not record sexual orientation. Captains' logs do not mention who held hands in the hold. Surgeons' journals note deaths and illnesses, but not the quiet intimacies that kept men sane. If we want to understand the lives of gay men on slave ships between 1780 and 1808, we have to read between the lines. We have to look for the silences. We have to trust that love, even in the worst conditions imaginable, will find a way. Stephanie Smallwood, a historian who wrote the book Saltwater Slavery, examined thousands of pages of shipping records from British and American slave traders in the late 18th century. She found evidence of what she called shipboard intimacies, relationships that formed during the crossing, bonds that were sexual, romantic, or simply survival-based, forged in conditions designed to strip away every shred of humanity. Smallwood argues that these intimacies were acts of resistance. The slavers wanted isolated, broken individuals. What they got were people who refused to be alone. Some of these intimacies were between men. We know this because occasionally, very occasionally, the sailors noticed. When they did, they wrote it down, usually as a curiosity, or a complaint. A 1789 account from the slave ship, Brooks, mentions 2 men found in an indecent posture below decks. The captain ordered them separated and flogged. The account does not give their names. It does not say what happened to them afterward. It does not say whether they survived the voyage. It notes the incident in the same tone as it notes a barrel of spoiled pork, an inconvenience, a minor disruption, nothing more. But they were there. 2 men, names unknown, finding each other in the dark, holding on to each other when everything else had been taken. The captain thought he was recording a disciplinary problem. What he actually recorded was evidence of love. You are on day 9. The ship hit a storm last night, the hold filled with seawater that poured through the gratings above, mixing with the waste and the vomit and the blood. You thought you were going to drown. Everyone thought they were going to drown. The ship pitched so violently that men were thrown against the walls, chains snapping tight, bones breaking. You heard the crack of someone's leg very clearly, and then the screaming. The sailors did not come down until morning. When they finally opened the hatches, the sun was so bright it felt like knives in your eyes. They let you up on deck in groups of 20, shackled at the ankles, still chained in pairs. You and Kofi stumble up the ladder together, blinking in the light. The sky is blue, impossibly, absurdly blue. The ocean stretches in every direction, flat and endless. There is no land. There is nothing but water. You have never seen anything so terrifying in your life. The sailors make you jump. It is part of the daily routine. They call it dancing. They play a drum and you are expected to jump up and down, to move, to keep your muscles from atrophying during the long weeks below. If you do not jump, they hit you. Some of the men jump. Some refuse and take the blows. You jump because Kofi is jumping, and you are chained to him, and you have no choice. Your legs are weak. You have not stood upright in over a week. The shackles have rubbed your ankles raw. But you jump, and the sailors laugh, and the captain watches from the quarterdeck with the expression of a man supervising cattle. Kofi whispers to you while you jump. He tells you he had a brother. The brother's name was Kwasi, born on a Sunday. Kwasi loved men. Everyone in the village knew. Kwasi lived with another man named Abo in a compound near the river, and they raised goats together, and the elders let them be because they worked hard and caused no trouble. When Kwasi died, sickness, a fever that took him in 3 days, Abo wept openly at the funeral. He cut his hair. He wore white cloth for a month. Everyone understood. No one said the word, but everyone understood. Kofi tells you this while jumping up and down on the deck of a slave ship in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, and you understand why he is telling you. He is saying, I know what you are, I see you, you are not alone. That night, back in the hold, Kofi kisses you. It is fast, barely a brush of lips in the suffocating dark, and then it is over. Neither of you speaks. You lie there, chained together, shoulder to shoulder, and you listen to the breathing of 300 men trying to survive the night. Your heart is pounding. You have not been kissed since yore. You did not think you would ever be kissed again. You thought that part of your life was over, that it died the night the raiders came. But here is Kofi, born on a Friday, a farmer from a village you will never see again, and he has just kissed you in the belly of a ship, and you are still alive. You are still alive. The records tell us that same-sex intimacy among enslaved Africans was more common than European observers wanted to admit. The scholar David Lambert, in his work on Caribbean slavery, found multiple accounts of planters and overseers expressing alarm at what they called unnatural relations among male slaves in the barracoons and holding pens along the West African coast. The European factors, agents of the British, French and Portuguese trading companies, noticed men arriving at the coastal forts already bonded in pairs, sometimes claiming to be brothers when they clearly were not. The factors did not care about the truth. They cared about inventory. If 2 men wanted to stay together, The factors shrugged and chained them together. It made no difference to the profit margin. Some of these pairings were romantic. Some were survival pacts. Some were both. The distinction mattered to the men involved. It did not matter to the men who bought and sold them. Kofi tells you stories to pass the time. He tells you about his village. He tells you about the festivals, the drumming, the way the whole village would gather to celebrate the yam harvest. He tells you about his wife, and his voice breaks, and you hold his hand until he can breathe again. He tells you about Kwasi and Abo, and how they used to argue loudly about the goats, and how everyone knew the arguments were not really about the goats, and how they would make up by the river when they thought no one was looking. He tells you these things like he is building a house in the dark, brick by brick, a place he can return to when the present becomes unbearable. You tell him about Yor. You have never said Yor's name aloud to another person, but here, in the dark, chained to a man you have known for 2 weeks, you say it. Yor, born on a Thursday, a hunter, strong enough to carry a bushbuck on his shoulders, gentle enough to cry when his mother died. You tell Kofi how Yor would touch your face in the forest, how his hands smelled like smoke and palm oil, how he would say your name like it was a prayer. You tell Kofi that you do not know if Yor is alive, and that not knowing is worse than knowing he is dead, because at least death is an ending. This not knowing is a wound that will not close. Kofi listens. When you finish, he says, he is alive. He has to be, because you are alive, and love does not die alone. It is the kindest lie anyone has ever told you. On day 17, a boy dies. He is maybe 13 years old. He is chained 3 rows behind you. You do not know his name. He has been sick since the storm, coughing up blood, shivering even in the heat. This morning, he stopped shivering. The sailors come down and unshackle his body from the man beside him. They carry him up the ladder like a sack of grain. You hear the splash when they throw him overboard. The man who was chained to him, a man with grey in his hair, old enough to be the boy's father, does not make a sound. He stares at the wall. He does not blink. You recognize the look. It is the look of someone whose mind has left his body, gone somewhere far away where the sailors cannot reach. That night Kofi holds you, not a kiss, just his arm around your shoulders, pulling you close in the cramped space. You rest your head against his chest. You can hear his heartbeat, steady, human, alive. You fall asleep like that, and for a few hours you dream of something other than the ocean. The historians who have studied the Middle Passage, Marcus Rediker, Stephanie Smallwood, Sowande Mustakim, all agree on one thing: the slavers designed the voyage to break people. The overcrowding, the filth, the darkness, the isolation, it was all intentional. Broken people are easier to sell. Broken people do not rebel. But people are not as easy to break as the slavers believed. Even in the hold of a slave ship, even chained and starved and brutalized, people found ways to remain human. They sang. They told stories. They remembered their names and the names of their ancestors. And some of them fell in love. The slavers never understood this. They saw cargo. They saw profit margins and mortality rates. They did not see 2 men holding hands in the dark. They did not see a kiss stolen in the few seconds before the sailors opened the hatch. They did not see Kofi and Kwame, born on Friday and Saturday, lying together in the belly of the Sally, keeping each other sane. History did not record their names. But we can imagine them. We have to imagine them. Because if we do not, they disappear entirely, and the slavers win. On day 23, the sailors bring a woman down into the men's section. She is young. She is bleeding. Her cloth is torn. She does not speak. The sailors chain her between 2 men and leave. Everyone understands what has happened. No one says it aloud. The woman curls into herself and weeps silently, her shoulders shaking. The man to her left, a man with scars across his chest, a man who has not spoken since the voyage began, begins to hum. It is a lullaby, low and soft. The woman's weeping slows. She does not stop, But she is not alone. The man keeps humming. Kofi squeezes your hand. He says nothing. There is nothing to say. You reach Barbados on August 9th, 1796. 53 days after leaving Cape Coast, 34 people died during the crossing. The survivors are brought up on deck and hosed down with seawater. You stand there naked, shivering in the heat, while the captain inspects you like livestock. Kofi is beside you. You are still chained together. You do not know if you will be sold together or separated. You do not know if you will ever see him again after today. The slave market in Bridgetown is an open square near the harbour. The air smells like sugar and rum and sweat. There are hundreds of people here. Buyers, sellers, enslaved people standing on platforms while white men examine their teeth and muscles. You and Kofi are sold in the same lot, 20 men purchased by a plantation owner named Richard Beckford. You do not know if this is luck or chance. You do not care. You are together. For now, that is enough. The first night in the barracoon at Beckford's plantation, you and Kofi lie side by side on the dirt floor. You are no longer chained. You could move apart if you wanted. You do not move apart. Kofi's hand finds yours in the dark. He says, "Whatever happens, we survive together." You believe him. You have to believe him. Because the alternative is unbearable. The records from Beckford's plantation survive in the Barbados archives. They list the names of every enslaved person he owned between 1796 and 1810. The names are anglicised, converted to English approximations by clerks who did not speak Akan. But there in the ledger for August 1796 are two names, Kofi and Kwamino. Kofi, Kwamino, Kofi and Kwame. They were real. They existed. And for at least 3 years, they lived on the same plantation, working the same fields, sleeping in the same quarters. The historian Trevor Bernard, who has spent decades studying Jamaican and Barbadian plantation records, found evidence of same-sex relationships among enslaved men in multiple estates across the Caribbean. Planters occasionally noted these relationships in letters and diaries, usually with disapproval, but sometimes with indifference. One 1803 letter from a Jamaican planter mentions two men who lived as man and wife in the slave quarters, and adds, "I see no harm in it, as they work well and cause no trouble." The planter's name was Edward Long. He owned 300 people. He noted the relationship the way he noted the weather, an observation, nothing more. But for the men involved, it was everything. We do not know how long Kofi and Kwame stayed together. The records stop in 1799. After that, nothing. No deaths recorded. No sales recorded. They simply disappear from the archive, the way most enslaved people disappear, into silence, into gaps, into the margins of history that no one bothered to preserve. But for 3 years at least, they were together. They survived the Middle Passage. They survived the plantation. They survived because they had each other. And tonight, nearly 230 years later, we say their names. Kofi and Kwamino, Kofi and Kwame. Born on Friday and Saturday. Men who loved each other when the world said they should not even be human. They had no monuments. They had no graves with their names carved in stone. But they had each other. And we remember. The plantation at Beckford's estate covers 2,000 acres of cane fields stretching inland from the coast. The work begins before sunrise. You are woken by the sound of a conch shell blown by the driver, a man named Thomas, who was born on this island and speaks English with an accent you are still learning to understand. You stumble out of the barracks into the grey pre-dawn light. Your body aches. Every muscle remembers yesterday's labour. Kofi is beside you, moving slowly, his hands wrapped in strips of cloth to protect the blisters that have not yet hardened into calluses. The cane fields are endless. Row after row of green stalks taller than a man, leaves sharp enough to cut skin. You are given a machete and told to cut. The overseer, a white man named Crawford, sits on a horse and watches. He does not speak. He does not need to. The whip on his saddle speaks for him. You cut cane from sunrise to noon when you are given 20 minutes to eat. Cornmeal porridge, thin and tasteless, barely enough to keep you standing. Then you cut until sunset. Then you stumble back to the barracks and collapse onto the wooden platform that serves as your bed. Kofi sleeps beside you, always beside you. In the barracks, there are 40 men, and everyone chooses where they sleep, and Kofi always chooses the space next to yours. No one comments. No one asks. The others understand, or they do not understand, or they understand and do not care, because everyone is too exhausted to care about anything except surviving until morning. On the third week, a man tries to escape. His name is Cudjoe. He runs during the midday meal, heading for the forest at the edge of the estate. He makes it perhaps half a mile before the dogs catch him. They bring him back in chains. Crawford has him whipped in front of everyone. 50 lashes, methodically delivered. The crack of leather on skin echoing across the yard. Cudjoe screams for the first 20. After that, he makes no sound at all. When it is finished, they leave him tied to the post overnight. In the morning, he is cut down and sent back to the fields. He can barely walk. A man named Kwashi helps him, supporting his weight, moving slowly down the rows. Crawford watches but does not interfere. Even he understands that a dead worker is a loss of investment. That night, Kofi holds you in the barracks. His arms around you, your face pressed against his shoulder. He does not say anything about Cudjoe. He does not need to. You both understand the message. Running is death. Staying is slow death. There is no good choice. There is only the choice to keep breathing, one day at a time, together. The barracks are divided by a rough hierarchy. The men who have been here longest sleep closest to the door, where the air is slightly better. The new arrivals sleep in the back, where the smell of the latrine trench is strongest. You and Kofi are new arrivals. You sleep in the back. But after a month, an older man named Kwako offers to trade places. He does not explain why. He simply moves his mat to the back and gestures for you to take his spot near the door. You try to thank him. He waves you off. Later, Kofi tells you that Kwako lost a son on the middle passage, a boy about your age. He thinks Kwako sees his son when he looks at you. You do not know if this is true. You accept the kindness anyway. Kwako becomes a kind of elder in the barracks. He is maybe 50 years old, though he looks older. His back is a map of scars from whippings that happened years before you arrived. He speaks Akan and English and a third language you do not recognize. He tells stories at night, when the day's work is done and everyone lies on their mats trying to find sleep. He tells stories from home, folk tales about Anansi the spider, trickster stories where the clever defeat the strong. Everyone listens, even the men who do not speak. Akan listened to the rhythm of his voice, the rise and fall, the small pockets of laughter when Anansi outsmarts the tiger or the python. For 10 minutes every night, Kwako gives everyone something other than cane fields and whips and exhaustion. One night Kwako tells a story you have not heard before. It is about 2 warriors from the Ashanti kingdom who loved each other. Their names were Osei and Kofi, the same name as your Kofi, though this is a different man from a different time. Osei and Kofi fought side by side in the wars against the Denkyira. They were famous for their bravery. They were also famous for sharing a compound, for refusing to marry, for the way they looked at each other when they thought no one was watching. The king knew. Everyone knew. But they were the best warriors in the army, so the king said nothing. When Ose was killed in battle, Kofi carried his body back to Kumasi and buried him with full honours. Then Kofi walked into the forest and was never seen again. Some people said he died of grief. Some people said he went to join Ose in the land of the ancestors. Kwaku does not say which version he believes. He just tells the story and lets everyone decide for themselves. After the story, the barracks are silent. You feel Kofi's hand find yours in the dark. He squeezes once. You squeeze back. Kwaku saw. You know he saw. But he does not say anything. He simply lies down on his mat and closes his eyes, and the moment passes. The plantation operates on a strict seasonal cycle: planting season, growing season, harvest season, grinding season. You learn the rhythms quickly because your survival depends on understanding them. Harvest season is the worst. 18-hour days, cutting cane until your hands bleed, hauling the stalks to the mill, feeding them into the grinding wheels while the overseer watches to make sure no one slows down. The mill runs day and night during harvest. The sound is constant: the creak of the wooden gears, the crash of the crushing rollers, the hiss of juice running into the boiling vats. Men lose fingers in the mill. You see it happen twice in your first harvest. The first time, the man screams and Crawford pulls him away from the machinery and wraps the stump in cloth and sends him back to work the next day. The second time, the man does not scream. He stares at his hand, or what used to be his hand, and faints. They carry him to the hospital hut, where the estate's so-called doctor, a white man who learned medicine from a book, does nothing useful. The man dies 3 days later from infection. His name was Kofi. Not your Kofi, a different Kofi. There are 5 men named Kofi on this plantation. It is a common name. Born on Friday. You wonder how many Kofis died on how many plantations across the Caribbean. Thousands. Tens of thousands. All of them born on a Friday. All of them gone. Your Kofi survives the first harvest. So do you. It feels like an achievement worth celebrating, though there is nothing to celebrate with. No rum ration. No extra food. Just the quiet relief of waking up another morning and finding each other still alive. The estate has a system of provision grounds, small plots of land where enslaved people are allowed to grow their own food on Sundays, the one day of the week when fieldwork stops. You and Kofi are assigned a 1/4-acre plot on a hillside above the cane fields. The soil is rocky and poor, but you plant yams and cassava and a few greens. Kofi knows farming. He shows you how to mound the soil, how to space the yam seeds, how to mulch with cane trash to keep the moisture in. You work together in silence, your hands in the dirt, the sun warm on your back. It is the closest thing to peace you have felt since the ship. On the provision grounds, you are not watched as closely. Crawford does not patrol here. The other overseers stay near the main estate. For a few hours every Sunday, you are almost free. Almost. You and Kofi sit under a mango tree at the edge of your plot and eat roasted cassava. You talk about home. You talk about the future, though neither of you believes in a future beyond next week. Kofi says that if he ever gets free, and he says if, not when, because he is not a fool, he will find a piece of land somewhere far from Cane and build a house and grow yams and never work for a white man again. You ask him what kind of house. He describes it in detail. Wooden walls, a thatched roof, a porch where you can sit in the evening and watch the sun go down. 2 rooms, a kitchen, a place for everything. He describes it like he can see it, like it already exists somewhere in the world, and he just has to find it. You do not tell him you think he will never see this house. You let him talk. Hope is rare enough. You do not kill it just because it is unlikely. Sometimes on Sundays, Kofi kisses you under the mango tree. Quick, careful kisses, always watching for anyone who might walk past. No one ever does. The provision grounds are scattered across the hillside, each plot separated by enough distance that you cannot see your neighbors. It is as private as anything gets on a plantation. You kiss him back. You put your hand on his face. You feel the roughness of his skin, the sweat, the warmth. You memorize it. Every time might be the last time. That is the reality of this life. Every kiss might be the last kiss. Every morning might be the last morning. You live accordingly. The scholar Sowande Mustaqim wrote a book called Slavery at Sea that examines the experiential reality of the Middle Passage from the perspective of the enslaved. She argues that the intimate bonds formed during the voyage, bonds of kinship, friendship, and romance, often persisted after landing. People who survived the crossing together formed what she calls saltwater kinship networks, relationships that had nothing to do with blood and everything to do with shared trauma and survival. These networks were a form of resistance. The planters wanted isolated individuals. What they got were people who built families out of nothing, who chose each other deliberately, who refused to be alone even when the system tried to force them into solitude. You and Kofi are saltwater kin. You survived the Sally together. You were sold together. You work the same fields, sleep in the same barracks, tend the same provision ground. The other men understand this. When the evening meal is distributed, more cornmeal porridge, sometimes a bit of salted fish, if Beckford is feeling generous. The man serving always gives you portions at the same time so you can sit together. When mats are rearranged in the barracks, no one takes the space between you. It is unspoken. It is understood. You are a pair. Everyone knows. On the plantation there are women too, housed in separate barracks on the other side of the estate. You see them in the fields sometimes, cutting cane in their own rows, moving with the same exhausted rhythm. Some of the men have relationships with the women. Some of the women have children. The plantation encourages this. More children mean more workers in 15 years. And workers who are born on the estate are cheaper than workers who have to be purchased from the coast. Beckford offers small incentives, an extra ration, a day off for women who bear children. The women understand what this means. They are being bred like livestock. Some refuse. Some comply because the incentives make survival slightly easier. Some fall in love and have children because love happens even here, even in the worst circumstances imaginable. No one offers incentives for men who pair with men. No one discourages it either, as long as the work gets done. Crawford does not care what happens in the barracks at night. His only concern is productivity. If you cut your quota of cane, he leaves you alone. If you do not, you are whipped. It is a simple calculus. You and Kofi cut your quotas. You are left alone. There is a man in the barracks named Ebo. He is tall, quiet, older than most. He sleeps alone in the corner. You notice that he watches you and Kofi sometimes, his expression unreadable. One night after Quacko finishes a story, Ebo speaks. His voice is low, hesitant, like he is testing the words before fully committing to them. He says he had a partner once, back home, a man named Kwasi. They lived together. They raised goats. Everyone in the village knew. No one cared. Then the raiders came. Kwasi was killed. Ebo was taken. He has been on this plantation for 7 years. He has not spoken Kwasi's name aloud since the day he was captured. The barracks are silent. Someone coughs. Someone shifts on their mat. No one says anything. Ebo lies back down and closes his eyes. The moment passes. But something has shifted. Ebo has named the thing that everyone knew but no one said. There are men here who love men. It is not a secret. It is not a scandal. It is simply a fact, like the fact that the cane grows tall, or the sun rises in the east. Kofi reaches for your hand. You let him take it. You fall asleep that way, fingers intertwined, and for the first time since the ship, You feel something close to safety. The plantation is not static. People come and go. Some are sold. Some die. Some are purchased to replace the ones who died. Every few months, a ship arrives from the coast with new captives, and the cycle begins again. You see them stumble off the boats in Bridgetown, blinking in the light, thin and sick and terrified. You remember being them. It has only been 6 months, but it feels like a lifetime. In November 1796, Beckford purchases 12 new men. They are Igbo, from the Bight of Biafra. They do not speak Akan. They do not speak English. They are placed in the barracks and given machetes and sent to the fields, and they learn the way you learned, by watching, by copying, by enduring. One of them is a boy, maybe 16. His name, you eventually learn, is Chukwu. He is small, thin, his ribs visible through his skin. He struggles with the work. Crawford notices. Crawford always notices. On Chukwu's 4th day, he collapses in the field. Heat, exhaustion, hunger. It does not matter why. Crawford rides over and dismounts and kicks him. Once, twice. Chukwu does not get up. Crawford raises his whip. You do not think. You step forward. You say, in English, "Please, he is sick. Let him rest." Crawford looks at you. His face is blank. He lowers the whip. He says, "Get him to the barracks. If he is not in the field tomorrow, you take his lashes." You and Kofi carry Chukwu back to the barracks. He is burning with fever. Kwako brings water. Ebo brings a cloth soaked in cool water and lays it on Chukwu's forehead. The boy mumbles in Igbo, words you do not understand. You sit with him. Kofi sits with you. By morning the fever breaks. Chukwu lives. He is back in the field the next day, shaky but standing. He looks at you once, a glance that lasts half a second, and you understand. He knows you saved him. He will not forget. Over the following weeks, Chukwu attaches himself to you and Kofi. He follows you to the provision grounds on Sundays. He sits near you during the evening meal. He does not speak much. His English is limited, your Igbo non-existent. But presence does not require language. He is alone. You and Kofi are not. He wants to be not alone too. You let him stay. One Sunday on the provision ground, Chukwu tries to explain something. He uses his hands, gestures, a few English words he has picked up. You eventually understand. Back home, in his village, he had a friend. The way he says friend makes it clear the word means more than friend. The friend's name was Ike. They were caught together by Ike's father. Ike's father was furious. He called them abominations. He sent Chukwu away from the village. A week later, raiders attacked. Chukwu was taken. He does not know what happened to Ike. He does not know if Ike is alive. He does not know if he will ever know. You understand this story. You have lived this story. Kofi has lived this story. Ebo has lived this story. It is the same story in different languages, the same loss, the same not knowing, that is worse than grief because grief at least has an ending. Kofi puts his hand on Chukwu's shoulder. He says, in slow, careful English, "You are not alone now." Chukwu nods. His eyes are wet, but he does not cry. He has learned, as you have learned, that tears are a luxury you cannot afford. Tears mean weakness. Weakness means you are targeted. You swallow the tears. You keep moving. You survive. The three of you become a unit. Not a couple, not exactly, but something close to family. Chukwu sleeps near you in the barracks. He works near you in the fields. On Sundays, he helps tend the provision ground, learning from Kofi how to plant and harvest. The other men accept this without comment. The barracks operate on an unspoken code. You take care of your people. Chukwu is your people now. That is all that matters. In December, a woman is brought to the barracks. Her name is Abina. She is maybe 30 years old. She is pregnant. Beckford has decided, for reasons no one explains, that she should sleep in the men's barracks instead of the women's. Perhaps there is no room in the women's quarters. Perhaps he does not care where she sleeps as long as she works. Abina is given a mat in the corner. She does not speak to anyone. She works in the fields until her belly is too large. Then she is assigned lighter tasks, carrying water, mending clothes, cooking for the overseers. The men leave her alone. No one bothers her. No one propositions her. She is pregnant and afraid and far from home, and everyone understands that some boundaries are not to be crossed. Abena gives birth in February 1797. The midwife, an older enslaved woman named Delia who has delivered dozens of babies on this estate, helps her through the labour. It takes all night. You hear Abena screaming from the barracks. In the morning, silence. Then a baby's cry. Abena survives. The baby survives. It is a girl. Beckford adds the baby to his ledger. One Negro girl born February 12, 1797, mother Abena. The baby is now property. She is worth £30 sterling to be collected when she is old enough to work. She is 2 days old. Abena names the baby Ama, born on a Saturday, the same day name as you. You feel a strange connection to this child you have never touched. Kofi says it is a good omen. You do not believe in omens anymore, but you do not argue. The baby cries at night. Abena rocks her, sings to her in Twi, tries to soothe her in the hot, airless barracks. The men do not complain. You cannot complain about a baby. A baby is innocent. A baby is the only truly innocent thing on this plantation. Some of the men help. Kwaku carves a small wooden rattle. Ebo offers Abena extra cloth for swaddling. You and Kofi bring her cassava from the provision ground. She accepts everything with a nod, still not speaking, still wary. You understand. She does not know if she can trust anyone. Trust is dangerous. Trust gets you hurt. But slowly, over weeks, Abena begins to speak. She tells you she is from the same region as Kofi, a village 2 days' walk from his. She asks if he knows certain families, certain landmarks. He does. They talk in Twi, fast and animated, and for a few minutes they are not on a plantation in Barbados. They are home. You watch them and you feel the ache of exclusion, not because they are ignoring you, but because you cannot join them in that linguistic homeland. Your Akan is different, coastal, not inland, and some words they use you do not recognize. But you are happy for them. Everyone deserves a few minutes of home, even if it is only in language. Abena asks about you and Kofi. She asks directly, in English, so you understand. You are together, yes? Kofi pauses. He looks at you. You nod. He says, yes. Abena smiles. It is the first time you have seen her smile. She says, good. Everyone should have someone, even here, especially here. The historian Jennifer Morgan, who wrote a book called Laboring Women, studied the experiences of enslaved women in the Caribbean and found extensive evidence of women forming intimate bonds with each other and with men in ways that defied the planters' attempts to control reproduction and sexuality. Morgan argues that enslaved people retained agency over their intimate lives even under conditions of total legal bondage. They chose their partners. They chose when and whether to have children. They chose how to structure their families. The planters could control their labour, but they could not fully control their hearts. You think about this as you watch Abena with baby Ama. Beckford owns Abena's body. He owns Ama's body, but he does not own the way Abena sings to her daughter, or the way she holds her close at night, or the love that passes between them. That is hers. It cannot be bought or sold or taken. It simply is. The same is true for you and Kofi. Beckford owns your labour. He can sell you tomorrow if he chooses. He can separate you, send you to different estates, ensure you never see each other again. But he does not own the fact that you love Kofi. He does not own the moments under the mango tree, the hand-holding in the dark, the whispered conversations when everyone else is asleep. Those are yours. They are the only things that are truly yours, and you hold on to them the way Abena holds on to Ama, fiercely, desperately, knowing they could be taken at any moment, but refusing to let go until they are. The year turns. 1797 becomes 1798. Time on a plantation does not flow the way it did in your village. There, time was marked by festivals, by harvests, by the ceremonies that structured the year. Here, time is marked by pain, the anniversary of your first whipping, the anniversary of the day a man died beside you in the field, the anniversary of the night Kofi first kissed you. You count time in scars, both visible and not. In March 1798, Beckford sells 6 men to a planter in Jamaica. The men are loaded onto a coastal sloop in Bridgetown and shipped north. You watch them go. One of them is Ebo. He does not say goodbye. He does not look back. His face is blank as he walks up the gangplank, chains around his wrists, heading for another island and another plantation and another overseer who will work him until he breaks or dies. You think about Kwasi, the partner Ebo loved and lost. Ebo has now lost everything twice. You wonder if there is a limit to how much loss a person can endure before they stop being a person and become something else, something hollow. Kofi holds your hand that night. He says, "We will not be separated. I will not let them." You want to believe him. You do not believe him. Kofi has no power to prevent anything. Neither do you. You are property. Property goes where it is sent. But you let him say it anyway, because hope is the only weapon you have left, even if it is a weapon that does not work. The new men who arrive to replace the ones sold are younger. Boys, really. 15, 16, 17. They are Mandinka, from the Gambia River region. They speak a language no one in the barracks understands. They are terrified. You remember being terrified. It has been 2 years, but you remember it like yesterday. The ship, the chains, the certainty that you were going to die. These boys have the same certainty written on their faces. You and Kofi take 2 of them under your protection. Their names, as best you can pronounce them, are Samba and Demba. They might be brothers, they might be lovers, they might be friends. You do not ask, it does not matter. They need help. You help them. Samba is the smaller of the 2. He cries at night, quiet sobs that he tries to muffle in his mat. Demba lies beside him and whispers in Mandinka, long streams of words that you cannot understand but recognize as comfort. You recognize the tone. It is the same tone Kofi uses with you when the nightmares come. The same soft reassurance that the present is survivable, even when it does not feel survivable. You teach Samba and Demba how to cut cane. You show them the angle of the blade, the rhythm of the swing, the way to avoid cutting your own leg when you are exhausted and your hands are shaking. You teach them which overseers to avoid and which ones are merely cruel instead of sadistic. You teach them how to move through the plantation like shadows, attracting no attention, becoming invisible. Invisibility is survival. The men who stand out are the men who get whipped. Quacko teaches them English. A few words a day. Good morning. Yes, sir. Water, please. The overseer is coming. Run. They learn quickly because their lives depend on learning. Within a month, they can follow simple commands. Within 2 months, they can hold basic conversations. Language is power. Not much power, but more than they had before. Demba asks you, in halting English, if you and Kofi are married. The question surprises you. Married is not a word you have applied to yourself. Enslaved people cannot legally marry. Marriage is a contract, and property cannot enter into contracts. But Demba is not asking about legality. He is asking about reality. You say, yes, we are married. Kofi overhears. He smiles. That night he says, I did not know we were married. You say, we are now. He kisses you. It is not furtive or hidden. It is in the barracks, in the dim light of the single candle that burns until someone blows it out, and if anyone sees, they do not comment. You are married. It is a fact. The plantation does not recognize it, but the people in this barracks do, and that is the only recognition that matters. The historian Randy Brown studied marriage practices among enslaved people in Barbados and found that informal marriages, Partnerships recognized by the community but not by law were extremely common. Brown examined plantation records, church records, and personal correspondence from the late 18th and early 19th centuries. He found references to enslaved couples living together for decades, raising children, being acknowledged as married by everyone on the estate, including sometimes the planters themselves. These marriages had no legal standing. They could be dissolved at any moment by a sale or a whim. But they were real. The people involved treated them as real. They called each other husband and wife. They built lives together within the tiny spaces that slavery allowed. Some of these marriages were between men. Brown found a 1799 letter from a Barbadian overseer to a planter in England, complaining about two men who refused to take wives and live together as man and wife, which causes talk among the Negroes. The overseer's concern was not moral, it was economic. Men who did not produce children were not increasing the estate's labour force. But the overseer also noted that the two men were excellent workers who give no trouble, and he recommended leaving them alone. The planter agreed. The men stayed together. Their names are not recorded. The overseer did not think their names were worth writing down, but they existed. They were real, and they won in the smallest possible way. They were allowed to stay together, to love each other, to build a life in the margins of a system designed to destroy them. You think about them sometimes, these nameless men on some other plantation. You wonder if they are still alive. You wonder if they know that somewhere across the island, you and Kofi are doing the same thing, refusing to take wives, living together as man and wife, building something that looks like marriage in a place where marriage is supposed to be impossible. In June 1798, a hurricane hits. You have never experienced a hurricane before. The sky turns green, the wind rises, the rain comes sideways, hard enough to strip leaves off trees, hard enough to tear the thatch off the barracks roof. Everyone huddles inside, water pouring through the gaps, the entire structure shaking like it might collapse. It lasts 6 hours. When it ends, the cane fields are flattened. The mill is damaged. 2 of the estate's outbuildings are gone, roofs ripped off and carried into the forest. 1 man is dead, crushed by a falling tree. His name was Kwaku. He was 19 years old. He had been on the estate for 3 months. The cleanup takes weeks. You work from dawn to dusk, clearing debris, salvaging what can be salvaged, replanting what can be replanted. Crawford drives everyone hard. The hurricane has cost Beckford money. Lost cane means lost sugar, means lost profit. The losses must be recouped. You are the mechanism of recoupment. You work until you can barely stand. So does everyone else. During the cleanup, you find a bird, a small green parrot, wing broken, lying in the mud. It is still alive. You do not know why you stopped to pick it up. You should keep moving. Stopping means Crawford might notice, but you stop anyway. You pick up the bird. It does not struggle. It is too weak to struggle. You carry it back to the barracks that night, hidden in your shirt. Kofi looks at you like you have lost your mind. He says, "We cannot keep a bird." You say, "I know." You keep the bird anyway. You make a small cage from scraps of cane. You feed it mashed cassava and water. The wing heals slowly. After 3 weeks, the bird can flutter from one side of the cage to the other. After 5 weeks, it can fly. You take it outside one Sunday and open the cage. The bird sits on your finger for a long moment, head cocked, black eyes staring at you. Then it flies away, up into the trees, gone. Kofi says, "Why did you do that?" You say, "Because something should get to be free." He understands. You both understand. The bird is not you, but for 5 weeks you kept something alive that should have died, and then you let it go. It is the smallest act of resistance imaginable. It changes nothing, but it means something anyway. Chukwu, who watched the whole thing, says in his improving English, "You are a good man." You are not sure this is true. Good men do not survive plantations. Good men die quickly, broken by the cruelty, unable to adapt. You have survived by becoming something other than good, harder, colder, willing to look away when Cudjo was whipped, willing to keep cutting cane while a man died 3 rows over. Goodness is a luxury. You gave it up on the ship, but you saved a bird. Maybe that counts for something. In September, Beckford visits the estate. He lives in Bridgetown and owns 3 plantations across the island. He visits each one twice a year to inspect the operations and ensure his investment is performing. He arrives in a carriage, dressed in a white linen suit that probably cost more than the entire barracks is worth. He walks through the fields with Crawford, nodding at explanations you cannot hear. He inspects the mill. He inspects the slave quarters. He walks through the barracks while you and the other men stand outside in a line, and he looks at you the way you might look at a cow you are considering purchasing. His eyes pass over you without recognition. You are not human to him. You are a unit of labor, a line in a ledger. After Beckford leaves, Crawford is in a foul mood. Apparently the estate is underperforming. Apparently production must increase. Apparently this is your fault. The rations are cut. The work hours are extended. For 2 weeks, life becomes measurably worse, which you did not think was possible. Then things settle back into the usual rhythm of exhaustion and survival. Crisis averted. The plantation continues. That night, Kofi says, "I want to kill him." You know he means Beckford. You say, "So do I." You will not kill him. You both know this. Killing Beckford means execution. Killing Beckford means torture first, then execution, your body left hanging as a warning to everyone else. Killing Beckford means ending not just your own life, but the lives of everyone the overseers decide was involved, which could mean the entire barracks. Rebellion is suicide. You are not ready to die, so you swallow the rage. You let it sit in your chest like a stone. You survive another day. But sometimes, late at night, you let yourself imagine it. Beckford's face, your hands around his throat. The moment when he realizes he is going to die, and there is nothing he can do to stop it. You imagine it in detail. You play it over and over in your mind. Then you let it go, because imagining is all you will ever have, and even imagination is dangerous. If Crawford could see inside your head, he would have you whipped for your thoughts alone. Kofi imagines it too. You can tell. He gets a faraway look sometimes, staring at nothing, his jaw tight. You know that look. You have seen it in the mirror. It is the look of someone who is murdering a man in his mind because he cannot murder him in reality. In October 1798, a ship arrives from the Gold Coast with 200 new captives. You go to Bridgetown with a work crew to help unload supplies for the estate. You see the captives being led off the ship. They look exactly like you looked 2 years ago. Thin, sick, terrified. The smell of the ship follows them onto the dock, that unmistakable smell of human waste and death and the ocean. You watch them and you feel something crack open in your chest. You survived this. You are still here. And they are about to begin the same nightmare you are still living. One of the men stumbles. He is shackled to the man in front of him. And when that man keeps walking, he is pulled off balance and falls. The sailor in charge kicks him, once, twice. The man tries to get up. He cannot. He is too weak. The sailor keeps kicking. You watch. You do not intervene. You cannot intervene. You are not even supposed to be looking. You turn away. You load sacks of cornmeal onto the cart. You do your job. You survive. That night, you cannot sleep. Kofi asks what is wrong. You tell him about the man on the dock. You tell him you did nothing. Kofi says, "There was nothing you could do." You say, "I know." But knowing does not help. You watched a man get kicked, and you did nothing. And that man is you 2 years ago, and you abandoned him. Logic says you could not have helped. Logic says intervening would have meant a beating or worse. Logic says survival requires looking away. But logic does not touch the guilt. The guilt sits in your chest next to the rage, two stones you carry everywhere, growing heavier each year. Kofi holds you. He does not tell you it is fine. He does not tell you to forget it. He knows better. He just holds you until you fall asleep. In November, Abena's daughter Ama takes her first steps. She is 1 year and 9 months old. She walks from Abena to Kwaku, arms outstretched, wobbling on unsteady legs. When she reaches Kwaku, he picks her up and laughs, and the sound is so unexpected. Real laughter, not bitter or sarcastic, but genuinely joyful, that everyone in the barracks stops and stares. Kwaku has not laughed like that in the 2 years you have known him. Maybe longer. Maybe he has not laughed like that since before he was captured. But he is laughing now, holding this baby girl who took 3 steps, and for 10 seconds the barracks is not a prison. It is a place where a child is learning to walk and people are happy about it. Ama becomes the barracks' collective daughter. Everyone watches out for her. When Abena is working in the fields, someone is always watching Ama. When Ama is hungry, someone finds food. When she cries, someone picks her up. She is the only child in the men's barracks, an unusual arrangement that Beckford apparently does not care enough to change, and she is loved in a way that transcends the usual boundaries. She belongs to everyone. She is proof that something innocent can exist here. She is proof that the plantation has not destroyed everything. You watch Kofi with Ama. He is gentle with her in a way he is not gentle with anything else. He makes her toys from scraps, a ball of wrapped cloth, a doll carved from a stick. He sits with her on Sunday afternoons and lets her babble at him in her child language, responding seriously as if he understands. You fall in love with him again, watching this. You did not know you could fall in love with someone twice, but you do. One Sunday, Kofi says, "If we had a child, what would we name her?" You are surprised by the question. You say, "We cannot have a child." He says, "I know, but if we could." You think about it. You say, "Ama. We would name her Ama after this one." Kofi smiles. He says, "Ama is a good name. You will never have a child. 2 men cannot make a baby, and even if you could, bringing a child into this life would be an act of cruelty. But for a few minutes, you let yourself imagine it anyway. A daughter. A small girl with Kofi's eyes and your stubbornness. A house somewhere far from here, with a porch where you can sit in the evening. A life where you are not property. A future. It is a fantasy. You know it is a fantasy. But fantasies are free, and sometimes they are all that keep you breathing. In December 1798, a man named Tacky arrives from Jamaica. He is being transferred between estates as part of some complex financial arrangement between planters. Tacky is 45 years old. He has been enslaved for 23 years. He has survived 5 plantations, 2 hurricanes, and a failed rebellion in Jamaica in 1760 that he does not talk about except to say that it failed and most of his friends died. Tacky is hard in a way that makes even Crawford wary. He does not smile. He does not bend. He works exactly as hard as he must to avoid punishment, and not one bit more. He is assigned a mat in the barracks near the back. Tacky notices you and Kofi immediately. He watches you for a week without speaking. Then one night, after Kwaku finishes a story, Tacky speaks for the first time since his arrival. He says, "I had a man once, in Jamaica. We were together 11 years. Then the master sold him to an estate in St. Thomas. I never saw him again. That was 15 years ago. No one responds. What is there to say? The story is everyone's story. Love and loss. Loss and more loss. The silence stretches. Then Tacky says, "His name was Cuffy. I say his name every night so I do not forget. Kofi, born on a Friday, best man I ever knew. Kofi squeezes your hand. You squeeze back. The barracks is full of ghosts. Kwasi and Abo, Yor and you, Kofi and Tacky, Ike and Chukwu. Men who loved men, separated by oceans and sails, and the casual cruelty of a system that did not recognize love as a thing worth preserving. All of you carrying the same wound, all of you surviving anyway. Tacky becomes part of the group. He works near you in the fields. He sits near you at meals. He does not talk much, but when he does, people listen. He has seen things. He knows things. He knows which herbs can bring down a fever. He knows how to set a broken bone. He knows which roots are edible and which will kill you. He survived a rebellion. That alone makes him valuable. Rebellions almost never succeed, but the men who survive them carry knowledge, how to organize, how to plan, how to move in secret. You do not ask Tacky about Jamaica. He will tell you if he wants to tell you, but you file the knowledge away. Tacky survived. That means survival is possible, even after the worst has happened. The year ends. 1799 arrives. You have been on this plantation for 2.5 years. You have been with Kofi for 2.5 years. You have survived. That is not nothing. On New Year's Day, not that the plantation observes New Year's Day, but Kwako keeps track of the calendar and tells everyone when the year changes. Kofi says, "We are still here." You say, "We are still here." It is the only celebration you can afford. You are alive. You are together. The plantation has not killed you yet. It is trying. It will keep trying. But today, right now, you have won. The victory is small and temporary and will not last, but it is yours. The cane harvest of 1799 is brutal. The rains came late, which means the cane is ready late, which means the grinding season extends into the hottest months when the work is nearly unbearable. You cut cane 16 hours a day. Your hands bleed through the cloth wrappings. Your back screams. Every muscle in your body exists in a state of constant pain. Kofi works beside you, moving with the mechanical efficiency of someone who has learned to turn off the part of his brain that registers suffering. You have learned the same trick. You are not really here. Your body is here, swinging the machete, but you are somewhere else. You are under the mango tree. You are in the forest with Yor. You are anywhere but this field. 3 men collapse during the harvest. 1 dies. His name was Kwasi, born on a Sunday. He was 26 years old. He had been on the estate for 4 years. The other 2 survive, but are permanently damaged. One cannot straighten his back anymore. The other lost vision in one eye from infection after a cane leaf sliced his face open. Crawford does not reduce their work quotas. They are expected to perform at the same level as before. They cannot. They are whipped for underperformance. The logic is circular and inescapable. Injury leads to reduced capacity. Reduced capacity leads to punishment. Punishment leads to further injury. The cycle continues until you die, or until you are sold to someone else, which is just a different kind of death. You survive the harvest. Kofi survives. Chukwu survives. Samba and Demba survive. Tacky survives, because Tacky is indestructible. Kwako survives, though he looks older now, moving more slowly, the decades of labour finally catching up to him. Abena survives. Ama survives, now 2 years old, walking and talking and calling Kwako Tata, which makes him smile every time. When the harvest finally ends in late March, everyone is given 1 day of rest. 1 day. You sleep for 14 hours. When you wake, your body still aches, but the ache is manageable. You can move without wanting to scream. This counts as recovery. Kofi says, "I do not know how many more harvests I can survive." You say, "As many as you have to." He says, "What if I cannot?" You do not have an answer. You just hold him. In April 1799, the British Navy stops a Dutch slave ship off the coast of Barbados. Britain and the Netherlands are at war, one of the endless European wars that mean nothing to you except that they occasionally disrupt the flow of supplies and new captives. The ship is seized. The captives on board, 162 people from the Bight of Benin, are technically contraband. The Navy auctions them in Bridgetown to recoup costs. Beckford purchases 11 of them. They are brought to the estate in chains, blinking in the sunlight, traumatized in ways you recognize because you lived them. Among the 11 is a man named Adebayo. He is Yoruba. He is maybe 30 years old. He is tall, lean, his face scarred with the traditional marks of his people, 3 parallel lines on each cheek. He speaks no English. He speaks no Akan. He is completely isolated by language, unable to communicate with anyone except through gesture. You remember what isolation felt like on the ship. You remember the terror of not understanding anything, of being surrounded by people whose words were meaningless sounds. You decide to help Adebayo the way you helped Samba and Demba. You teach him the words he needs to survive. Machete, water, yes sir, careful, overseer, run. He learns slowly, not because he is stupid, but because he is traumatized and exhausted, and learning English is the least of his concerns. But he learns. Over weeks, Adebayo begins to speak, first in fragments, then in sentences. His accent is thick, the vowels shaped differently than yours, but you understand him. He tells you he was a trader in his city, Oyo. He traveled between villages buying cloth and selling cola nuts. He had a wife. He had 3 children. He was captured by raiders who sold him to the Dutch. His wife and children were not taken. He does not know what happened to them. He will never know. Adebayo asks about you and Kofi. He asks the question everyone eventually asks. You are brothers? You say, no. He waits. You can see him trying to work out the relationship. Finally you say, we are together, like husband and wife. Adebayo nods slowly. He says, in Oyo, there are men like this. My cousin. He lived with another man. They had a farm. Everyone knew. No one cared. It is the same story you have heard from Kofi about Kwasi and Igbo, from Igbo about himself and Kwasi, from Chukwu about Ike. The same story across different languages and different regions and different cultures. Men loving men. Communities that knew and accepted or knew and tolerated or knew and said nothing. Because what happened between 2 men in private was not the community's concern. The Europeans think sodomy is a sin unique to their own societies, a corruption that must be rooted out. They are wrong. Same-sex love has always existed. It exists everywhere. It existed in your village, in Kofi's village, in Igbo's village, in Chukwu's village, in Adebayo's city. The Europeans did not bring it. They did not stop it either, though they tried. It survives because love survives, even here, even now. The historian Mark Eprecht studied same-sex practices in West Africa and found overwhelming evidence that pre-colonial African societies had complex and varied approaches to same-sex relationships. Some societies had specific social roles for men who loved men. Some had acceptance within kinship networks. Some had linguistic terms for these relationships that predate any European contact. The idea that homosexuality was imposed on Africa by Europeans is a colonial myth. What Europeans imposed was the criminalization, the persecution, the idea that same-sex love was sinful and unnatural. But the love itself was already there. It had always been there. Adebayo becomes part of the barracks network. He works near you in the fields. He sits with the group in the evenings. He learns the rhythms of the plantation, the unspoken rules, the survival strategies. He is smart. He adapts. By June, he is fluent enough in English to joke, and his jokes are dry and dark and make everyone laugh. He says things like, in Oyo, I was a respected trader. Here, I am a donkey. At least a donkey gets fed better. The absurdity lands. Everyone laughs. Laughter is rare and precious. One night, Adebayo tells a story about two men in Oyo who were famous for their love. They were warriors in the army of the Alaafin, the king. They fought together in the wars against Dahomey. They were inseparable. When one was killed in battle, the other carried his body back to Oyo and demanded a warrior's burial. The king granted it. Both men were honored. Their names were remembered. Adebayo says the story is well known in Oyo, told to children as an example of loyalty and love. You ask the names. Adebayo says them in Yoruba, then translates Adeola and Bamidele. Adeola means crown has honor. Bamidele means follow me home. The names together tell the story. One had honor. One came home. They were complete. The barracks is silent. Then Tacky speaks. He says, we should remember their names, Adeola and Bamidele, so they are not forgotten. Everyone agrees. That night, before sleep, someone says the names aloud, Adeola and Bamidele, two warriors from Oyo who loved each other and were remembered for it. It is a small act of defiance against the forgetting. The plantation wants you to have no history, no past, no stories except the story of your enslavement. But you have stories. You carry them. You speak them aloud. And in speaking them, you refuse to disappear. In July, Beckford sells Quaco. No warning. No explanation. One morning, Crawford walks into the barracks and points at Quaco and says, you, pack your things. You are being transferred. Quaco does not argue. He packs his small bundle, a spare shirt, a wooden bowl, the tools he carved for himself. He says goodbye to Abena and Amma. Amma cries. She does not understand where her tata is going. Quaco picks her up and holds her for a long moment, his face pressed against her hair. Then he puts her down and walks out. He does not look back. He cannot afford to look back. You watch him go. You feel the familiar hollow ache. Another person gone. Another connection severed. The plantation gives, and the plantation takes away. Mostly it takes. That night, the barracks feels emptier. Quaco's mat is still there, unclaimed. No one sits on it. It feels wrong to take his space before the memory of him has even cooled. Eventually, someone will. Space is too valuable to leave unused. But not tonight. Kofi says, how much more can we lose? You say, everything. We can lose everything. And then we keep going anyway. It is not comforting. It is just true. In August 1799, a fever sweeps through the estate. It starts in the women's barracks and spreads quickly. 10 people die in 2 weeks. The estate's doctor does nothing useful. He bleeds the sick, which makes them weaker. He prescribes mercury, which poisons them. He insists the fever is caused by bad air and orders the windows in the barracks closed, which makes the air worse. People die despite him, not because of any natural limit to the disease, but because their bodies eventually fight it off or give up entirely. Abena gets the fever. For 3 days she burns, delirious, calling out for people who are not there. Amma stays with her, a small confused child sitting beside her mother, not understanding why Mama will not wake up. The men take turns watching Amma, feeding her, keeping her away from her mother's sickbed. On the 4th day, Abena's fever breaks. She survives. She is weak, barely able to stand, but she is alive. Amma climbs into her arms and will not let go. You get the fever on day 6. It hits fast. One moment you are cutting cane. The next moment the world tilts and you are on the ground. Kofi carries you back to the barracks. You do not remember the walk. You do not remember much of the next 3 days. You remember heat. You remember Kofi's hand on your forehead, cool and steady. You remember voices, Kofi, Tacky, Adebayo, saying things you cannot pass. You remember thinking you are going to die and feeling almost relieved because dying means the pain stops, but you do not die. On the fourth day you wake up. The fever is gone. You are soaked in sweat, weak as a newborn, but alive. Kofi is beside you. He looks like he has not slept in days. He probably has not. He says, "You are back." You say, "I am back." He kisses you, right there in the barracks, in full daylight, in front of everyone. You are too weak to kiss him back properly, but you try. When he pulls away, he is crying. You have never seen Kofi cry. Not on the ship, not during the harvest, not when Quacko was sold. But he is crying now, and you understand. He thought he lost you. He thought you were going to die and leave him alone. You did not die. You are still here. The relief is overwhelming. Tacky says, "You are lucky. The fever took 6 people this week." You do not feel lucky. You feel like you were beaten with a stick. But you are alive. That counts as luck. The fever passes. By September, the estate is recovering. The dead are buried in unmarked graves behind the provision grounds. Their names are not recorded. Beckford reduces the rations to recoup the cost of lost labour. The logic is insane. The workers are weaker from sickness, so he feeds them less, which makes them weaker still. But plantations do not run on logic. They run on extraction. Every ounce of labour must be extracted. Every penny of profit must be maximised. Human cost is irrelevant. You recover slowly. For 2 weeks you are assigned lighter tasks, carrying water, mending fences, work that does not require the full strength you do not yet have. Kofi stays close. He watches you like he is afraid you will collapse again. You probably will not collapse. Probably. But his vigilance is comforting anyway. In October, Samba is caught stealing food from the estate's storehouse. He and Demba have been hungrier than usual. Everyone has been hungrier than usual since the rations were cut. And Samba made the dangerous decision to take a sack of cornmeal. He was seen. He was reported. Crawford has him whipped. 20 lashes. Demba watches, his face blank, and you know that blankness. It is the face of someone who is screaming inside, but cannot afford to scream outside. After the whipping, Samba can barely walk. Demba helps him back to the barracks. You and Kofi bring water and cloth. You clean the wounds as best you can. Samba does not cry. He grits his teeth and endures. When it is done, he says, in Mandinka-accented English, "I am sorry. I was stupid." Demba says, "You were hungry. We are all hungry." That night, Demba holds Samba the way Kofi held you during the fever, careful, gentle, his hand on Samba's shoulder, keeping him anchored. You watch them, and you see yourself and Kofi. Different people, same love, same survival. The year grinds on. November, December. The days blur together. Work, sleep, work, sleep. The endless cycle broken only by Sundays on the provision ground and the small moments of connection in the barracks at night. You are surviving. It is not living. It is just surviving. But survival is more than many people manage. On Christmas Day, which the estate does observe, giving everyone half a day off and a small rum ration, Kofi asks you to marry him. You are already married by your own reckoning, but he asks anyway. He says, "I want to say it out loud. I want to choose you in front of witnesses." You say, "Yes." That afternoon, on the provision ground, with Tacky and Adebayo and Chukwu and Samba and Demba and Abena and Little Ama as witnesses, you and Kofi marry each other. There is no priest. There is no church. There are no legal documents. But Kofi takes your hands and says, "You are my husband. I choose you, as long as we both live." You say the same words back to him. "You are my husband. I choose you, as long as we both live." Tacky, acting as an improvised officiant, says, "Then you are married. In the eyes of God and in the eyes of everyone here, you are married." It is the simplest ceremony imaginable. It lasts 3 minutes. It is the most important thing that has ever happened to you. That night, lying together in the barracks, Kofi says, "Do you think this counts?" You say, "It counts to me." He says, "It counts to me too." You are married. The law does not recognize it. Beckford does not recognize it. But everyone in this barracks recognizes it, and that is enough. You chose each other. You said the words. You are bound not by chains, but by choice. And that makes all the difference. The historian Emily Clark studied marriage practices among enslaved people in the Caribbean and the American South, and found that enslaved communities developed their own marriage rituals that had nothing to do with legal or religious sanction. Jumping the broom, speaking vows in front of witnesses, exchanging small tokens. These marriages were real to the people involved. They structured families, created obligations, built networks of mutual support. The fact that the law did not recognize them did not make them less real. If anything, it made them more real, because they were chosen freely in a context where almost nothing else was free. Some of these marriages were between men. Clark found references in plantation records and personal letters to men who were understood by their communities to be married to each other. Overseers and planters sometimes noted these relationships with disapproval, sometimes with indifference, sometimes not at all. But the communities knew, the people in the slave quarters knew. They recognized these marriages. They respected them. And when historians bother to look closely at the records, the evidence is there. You and Kofi are part of that history. You are not unique. You are not alone. Across the Caribbean, across the American South, across every plantation and estate and farm where enslaved people were forced to labor, there were men who loved men. Some of them married. Some of them built lives together in the tiny spaces that slavery allowed. Most of them were never written down. Most of them disappeared into the silence of history. But they were real. They existed. And we remember. The year 1800 arrives. You have been with Kofi for 3.5 years. You have survived the Middle Passage, 2 harvests, a hurricane, a fever epidemic, and the slow, grinding brutality of plantation life. You are 27 years old. Kofi is 29. You are alive. You are together. You are married. Against every odd, against every force designed to break you, you have built something that looks like a life. It will not last forever. Nothing lasts forever. Beckford could sell you tomorrow. The next fever could kill one of you. The next hurricane could destroy the estate. The future is uncertain and probably short. But you have today. You have this moment. You have Kofi's hand in yours. And that is more than you thought you would ever have when you were chained in the hold of the Sally, waiting to die. You are not waiting to die anymore. You are waiting to live. Even here, even now, you are choosing to live. In February 1800, a Royal Navy patrol boat docks in Bridgetown carrying news that changes everything. The British Parliament is debating a bill to abolish the slave trade. Not slavery itself, the trade. The buying and selling of human beings across the Atlantic. The capture, the ships, the Middle Passage. If the bill passes, it will become illegal for British ships to carry enslaved people from Africa to the Caribbean. The news spreads through the plantation like fire. You hear it from a house slave, who heard it from Crawford, who heard it from Beckford, who read it in a newspaper from London. The details are vague. No one knows when the bill might pass. No one knows if it will pass. But the possibility alone is enough to send a shockwave through the estate. Tacky says, "It means nothing. They will still own us. They will just breed us instead of buying us." He is right. Abolishing the trade does not free anyone currently enslaved. It just means the planters will have to rely on natural increase, children born into slavery, to maintain their labor force. For you and Kofi, it changes nothing. You are already here. You will die here. But for the people still in Africa, the people who have not yet been captured, it might mean something. It might mean they stay free. You think about your village. You think about the people who were not taken the night the raiders came. If the trade ends, they will never face what you faced. They will never see the inside of a ship. They will never cross the ocean in chains. They will live and die in the place they were born, which is all anyone should ever ask for. Kofi says, "Do you think it will pass?" You say, "I do not know, but I hope." Hope is dangerous. Hope makes you vulnerable. But you let yourself hope anyway, because what else is there? The bill does not pass in 1800, or 1801, or 1802. The debates continue in London, but nothing changes. Ships keep arriving. New captives keep being sold. The Middle Passage continues, a river of human misery flowing west across the Atlantic, and you watch from the plantation and feel the weight of all those people who are living right now what you lived 4 years ago. You cannot help them. You can barely help yourself. But you remember them. You hold space for them in your mind. They are not alone. You were them once. You survived. Maybe they will too. In March 1801, Beckford dies. Heart failure. He is 56 years old. The estate passes to his son, Richard Beckford Jr., who is 28 and has never run a plantation in his life. Young Beckford arrives from London with ideas about scientific agriculture and labour efficiency. He fires Crawford and hires a new overseer named William Preston, who is worse. Preston believes in what he calls incentive systems, bonuses for workers who exceed quotas, punishments for those who fall short. The quotas are set impossibly high. No one gets bonuses. Everyone gets punished. The violence increases. 3 men die in the first 6 months under Preston's management, 1 from a beating, 2 from exhaustion. You survive by keeping your head down. You cut your cane. You meet your quota. You do not make eye contact with Preston. You become invisible. It is a skill you have perfected over 4 years. The ability to be present without being noticed, to work without drawing attention, to exist in the spaces between the overseer's gaze. Kofi does the same. So does everyone else who wants to live. In the barracks, Tacky starts talking about rebellion. Not loudly, not openly, but in whispers, late at night, when only the core group is listening. He says the Jamaica Rebellion in 1760 failed because it was poorly coordinated. He says if you plan carefully, if you wait for the right moment, if you have enough people, you can win. He says freedom is worth dying for. You listen. You do not commit. Rebellion is suicide. You have seen what happens to rebels. Torture, execution, their bodies left hanging as warnings. You do not want to die that way. You do not want Kofi to die that way. But you understand why Tacky talks about it. 4 years on this plantation, and you are tired. Bone tired. Soul tired. Tired in a way that sleep does not fix. Sometimes death starts to look like the easier option. Kofi says, "If there is a rebellion, we will have to choose." You say, "I know." He says, "What will you choose?" You say, "I will choose you. Whatever keeps us alive and together, that is what I choose." It is not a brave answer. It is not a heroic answer. But it is the truth. You are not a revolutionary. You are just a man trying to survive long enough to hold your husband one more night. If that makes you a coward, so be it. You will be a living coward instead of a dead hero. The rebellion does not happen. Tacky talks about it for months, but talk is all it ever becomes. Too many people are afraid. Too many people have seen rebels die. Too many people have children or partners they cannot risk. The moment passes. Tacky stops talking about it. He goes back to cutting cane, his face hard, his eyes distant. You understand? He needed to believe it was possible. Now he knows it is not. The knowledge sits heavy. In August 1801, a beaner is sold. Preston decides the estate has too many unproductive workers. Women with small children who cannot work full days in the field. Abena and 3 other women are sold to a planter in St. Lucia. Amma, now 4 years old, is sold with her. You watch them leave. Amma is crying. Abena is silent, her face blank in that way you recognize. She is somewhere else. Her body is walking onto the ship, but her mind has gone far away where the pain cannot reach. The barracks loses something when Abena and Amma leave. A lightness, a reason to smile. Amma was everyone's daughter. Her absence is a hole that does not fill. For weeks afterward, men forget and look toward the corner where she used to play, expecting to see her. She is not there. She is in St. Lucia. You will never see her again. Kofi takes it hard. He does not say anything, but you know. He loved Amma. He let himself love her, which was a mistake because love on a plantation is always a mistake. Everything you love can be taken. Everything will be taken, eventually. It is just a matter of time. You hold Kofi at night. He does not cry. He is past crying. He just lies there, staring at nothing, and you hold him and hope it helps. You do not know if it helps. You do it anyway. In 1802, you turn 29. Kofi turns 31. You have been together for 5 years. 5 years since the ship. 5 years since the first night he kissed you in the dark. You are old men now by plantation standards. Most people do not live to 30. Your bodies are breaking down. Kofi's back is permanently bent. Your knees crack when you stand. You both have scars that ache when it rains. But you are alive. You have each other. You count it as victory. The provision ground has grown over the years. You and Kofi have expanded the plot, clearing more of the hillside, planting more yams and cassava and vegetables. You are good at this. Farming is in Kofi's blood, and he has taught you everything he knows. On Sundays, you work the plot together, moving in practice synchronization, not needing to speak because you know what the other will do before he does it. It is the closest thing to peace you have. Preston notices the provision ground. He notices that you and Kofi are producing more food than you need for yourselves. He institutes a new rule. Surplus produce from provision grounds must be sold to the estate at fixed prices. The prices are absurdly low. You are essentially giving the estate your Sunday labor for free, but you cannot refuse. Refusal means losing the provision ground entirely, so you comply. You give Preston your yams and cassava and greens, and he pays you a fraction of their value, and you swallow your rage and survive another week. In June 1803, a man named Kwaku arrives from the Gold Coast. He is a Khan, like you. He speaks your language. It is the first time in 6 years you have spoken to someone in your own dialect, and the sound of it brings tears to your eyes. Kwaku is young, maybe 22. He is terrified. He reminds you of yourself 6 years ago, lost, confused, certain he is going to die. You take Kwaku under your wing. You teach him English. You teach him how to survive. You tell him about the overseer, the quotas, the rules. You introduce him to the group: Kofi, Tacky, Adebayo, Chukwu, Samba, Demba. Kwaku listens, nods, tries to absorb everything. He asks about you and Kofi. You tell him the truth. He nods again, unsurprised. He says in Akan, "My brother was like you. He loved men. Our family knew. It was not a problem." Past tense. Was. You do not ask what happened to the brother, you know. The brother is dead, or enslaved, or lost. The brother is another name in the long list of people who are gone. Kwaku becomes part of the barracks. He adapts quickly. He is smart, observant, willing to learn. Within 3 months he is fluent in English. Within 6 months he is friends with everyone. He has a gift for making people laugh, a dry humor that cuts through the misery. You are grateful for him. The barracks needs new energy. Too many people have been here too long, worn down to nothing, barely holding on. Kwaku reminds everyone that survival is still possible. In November 1803, the British Parliament finally passes the Abolition Act. It will take effect in 1807. 4 years from now, it will become illegal to transport enslaved people on British ships. The news reaches Barbados in December. There is no celebration. The enslaved people already on the island are not freed. Nothing changes for you. But the future has shifted slightly. In 4 years, the ships will stop coming. The Middle Passage will end. You think about the Sally. You think about the 342 people who boarded that ship in 1796. You think about the 41 who died during the crossing. You think about the hold, the chains, the smell, the screaming. In 4 years, no one will ever experience that again. Not on a British ship, anyway. It is not enough. It is nowhere near enough, but it is something. Kofi says, "We survived the last ship that should have ever existed." You say, "No, we survived one of the last. There will be thousands more before 1807. He says, "But after 1807? You say, "After 1807, no one else has to survive what we survived. It is a small comfort. You are still enslaved. You will die enslaved. But the thing that brought you here, the machinery of the Middle Passage, will end. Future generations will be spared that specific horror. You hold on to that thought. It is the only good news you have had in 6 years. The years blur. 1804, 1805, 1806. You work, you survive. People come and go. Some are sold, some die, some arrive to replace them. The barracks is a river. The water is always flowing, but the river remains. You and Kofi are constants. So is Tacky, indestructible Tacky, now in his 50s and still cutting cane like a man half his age. So is Adebayo, who has become the barracks storyteller now that Kwako is gone. So are Chukwu and Samba and Demba, your chosen family, the people you have survived with. In January 1807, the Abolition Act takes effect. The slave trade is over. Ships stop arriving from Africa. The docks in Bridgetown are quieter. The auctions slow and then stop. For the first time in 200 years, no new captives are being brought to Barbados. You are 34 years old. Kofi is 36. You have been on this plantation for 10 years. You have been together for 10 years. You are still alive. You are still married. You have survived everything the plantation threw at you. Hurricanes, fevers, beatings, starvation, the constant grinding brutality of forced labor. You have survived because you had each other, because you refused to be alone, because love, even in the worst place imaginable, gave you a reason to keep breathing. One Sunday in March 1807 on the provision ground, Kofi says, "Do you remember the ship?" You say, "Every day." He says, "Do you ever wish we had died there, that we never had to live through this?" You think about it, honestly. You say, "No, because then I would not have had you, and having you was worth everything else." He kisses you. The same kiss he gave you in the hold of the Sally 11 years ago. The same kiss he has given you 1,000 times since. You kiss him back. The sun is warm. The provision ground is green. The yams are growing well. It is not freedom. It is not home. But it is yours. You built this. Together, against every force designed to break you. And you are still here. The Middle Passage is over. But you survived it. You carry its scars. You carry its ghosts. You carry the names of everyone who did not make it. The 41 who died on the Sally. The men and women who died in this barracks over the years. The children sold away. The partners separated. The endless litany of loss. You carry them all. And by carrying them, you keep them alive. They are not forgotten. You will not let them be forgotten. Tonight, nearly 200 years later, we say their names too. We remember the men who loved men in the hold of slave ships. We remember their courage, their resilience, their refusal to let slavery destroy their capacity for love. We remember Kofi and Kwame, Kofi and Kwamino, real people who existed, who survived, who loved each other when the world said they should not even be human. The plantation continues. Days, into weeks, into months, into years. The rhythm never changes. Dawn, fields, dusk, barracks, sleep. Dawn again. You are 37 years old in 1810. Your hair is starting to grey. Kofi is 39. His back so bent now that he cannot stand fully upright anymore. Preston pushes harder every year, squeezing every ounce of labour from bodies that are already broken. Men die younger now. The average age in the barracks is dropping. You and Kofi are old men in a population that does not live long enough to grow old. But you are still together. 13 years since the ship. 13 years of surviving side by side. It is longer than most marriages in any context. It is a lifetime in this one. In April 1810, Tacky dies, Not from violence, not from fever, he simply stops. One morning he does not wake up. His heart gave out in the night. He was 53 years old. He had been enslaved for 31 years. He survived 5 plantations, 2 rebellions, and more brutality than any human should have to endure. And then one night, quietly, he died in his sleep. You and Kofi dig his grave on the hillside above the provision grounds. The estate does not provide coffins for enslaved people. You wrap Tacky's body in a piece of cloth and lower him into the earth. Adebayo says a prayer in Yoruba. Chukwu says one in Igbo. Kwaku says one in Akan. You say one in your own dialect, the words your mother taught you when you were a child, words for guiding the dead to the ancestors. You do not know if Tacky's ancestors can find him here, so far from home. But you say the words anyway. Before you fill in the grave, you speak. You say, Tacky survived. He survived longer than almost anyone. He survived because he refused to break. We will remember him. We will say his name, Tacky. And we will say the name of the man he loved, Cuffy, born on a Friday. Tacky loved Cuffy for 15 years after Cuffy was gone. That is the kind of love that does not die. Everyone is silent. Then Kofi says, that is the kind of love we all carry. You fill in the grave. You plant a mango tree over it, a seedling from the tree on your provision ground. Someday it will grow tall. Someday people will sit in its shade and never know a man named Tacky is buried beneath it. But you will know, and you will tell the story, and the story will keep him alive. The barracks feels emptier without Tacky. He was the oldest, the survivor, the one who had seen everything and lived to tell about it. His absence is a reminder that no one is indestructible. Everyone breaks eventually. The only question is when. Kofi's health declines through 1811. His back pain worsens. He develops a cough that will not go away. The estate doctor examines him for 30 seconds and prescribes rest, which is useless advice on a plantation where rest does not exist. You do what you can. You give Kofi your food ration. You take on extra work so his quota is easier to meet. You brew teas from herbs Tacky taught you about, roots and leaves that might ease the cough, might reduce the pain. They help a little, not enough. Preston notices Kofi is slowing down. He reduces Kofi's ration as punishment for reduced productivity. The logic is insane. Kofi is weak, so Preston starves him, which makes him weaker. You protest. You go to Preston directly, which is dangerous, and you say, he is sick. He needs food, not less food. Preston looks at you like you are an insect. He says, he needs to work. If he cannot work, he is useless. Useless Negroes do not eat. You want to kill him. You want to wrap your hands around his throat and squeeze until he stops breathing. You do not. You walk away. You go back to Kofi, and you share your ration with him, and you survive another day. In June 1811, Kofi collapses in the field. He is cutting cane one moment, on the ground the next. You run to him. His eyes are open but unfocused. He is breathing but barely. You and Chukwu carry him back to the barracks. Preston does not stop you. Kofi is clearly dying. Even Preston can see that. Dead men do not cut cane. There is no point forcing him to stay in the field. Kofi lies on his mat for 3 days. The cough worsens. His breathing becomes laboured, each breath a fight. You do not leave his side. You hold his hand. You speak to him even though you are not sure he can hear. You tell him about the provision ground, about the mango tree over Tacky's grave, about the stories you will tell about him when he is gone. You tell him you love him. You tell him he was the best thing that ever happened to you. You tell him you would do it all again, the ship, the plantation, the 13 years of suffering, just to have him. On the 3rd night, Kofi's breathing changes. It becomes shallow, irregular. You know this rhythm. You have seen it before. He is dying. You lie down beside him, your body pressed against his, your hand holding his hand. You say, I am here. You are not alone. I am here. His hand squeezes yours. Once. Weak, but deliberate. He hears you. You stay there all night. Sometime before dawn, Kofi stops breathing. You feel it, the moment when his chest stops rising, when his hand goes slack in yours. He is gone. You do not move. You lie there holding him as the sun rises, as the other men wake and see and understand and quietly leave you alone. You lie there until Adebayo finally comes and puts a hand on your shoulder and says, "It is time." You let go of Kofi's hand. You stand up. You look at him one last time, the man you loved for 13 years, the man who kissed you in the hold of a slave ship, the man who married you on a provision ground, the man who survived everything until he could not survive anymore. He is 40 years old. He should have lived another 40 years. He should have grown old with you. He should have seen freedom. He saw none of those things. Slavery killed him. Not quickly. Slowly. It took 13 years, but it killed him. You and Chukwu and Kwaku dig the grave next to Tacky's. You wrap Kofi in cloth. You lower him into the earth. You say the prayers. You speak his name. Kofi. Born on a Friday. Husband. Survivor. Beloved. You plant another mango seedling. Someday there will be a grove here. Trees marking the graves of men who should never have died on this island. The days after Kofi's death are the hardest of your life. Harder than the ship. Harder than the whippings. Harder than anything. You wake up and he is not there. You work in the fields and he is not beside you. You return to the barracks and his mat is empty. The absence is unbearable. You do not know how to survive without him. For 13 years he was your reason to survive. Now he is gone. What is the point? Chukwu finds you on the provision ground one Sunday, staring at nothing. He sits beside you. He says, "When I lost Ike, I wanted to die. I thought about dying every day, but I am still here. You will be too." You say, "How?" He says, "One day at a time, 1 hour at a time, 1 breath at a time." You survive because that is what he would want. You survive because he cannot. It is not comfort, but it is truth. Kofi would want you to survive. You owe him that. You owe him your survival. So you survive. The years pass. You are 40 in 1813, 42 in 1815, 45 in 1818. You're an old man now, bent and scarred and tired. You have been on this plantation for 21 years. Most of the people you knew are dead. Tacky, Kofi, Kwako, Ebo, men whose names you have forgotten and men whose names you will never forget. The barracks is full of new faces, young men who were born into slavery, who have never known freedom, who think this is simply how life is. You tell them stories. You tell them about Kofi. You tell them about Tacky and Kuffy. You tell them about the ship, the Middle Passage, the 3,000 miles of ocean that brought you here. They listen. Some believe. Some think you are exaggerating. But they listen. You tell them about love. You tell them that even here, even in the worst place imaginable, love is possible. You tell them you were married to a man for 13 years, and no one could take that from you. The plantation took everything else, your freedom, your home, your health, your life. But it could not take the fact that you loved Kofi and he loved you. That was yours. It will always be yours. In 1820, you are 47 years old. Your body is failing. You can barely work anymore. Preston reduces your ration to almost nothing. You are starving slowly. You know how this ends. You have seen it happen to others. When you can no longer work, you are left to die. It will not be long now. One Sunday you go to the provision ground one last time. You sit under the mango trees. They are tall now, providing shade, bearing fruit. Tacky's tree and Kofi's tree, side by side, their branches intertwining. You think about the men buried beneath them. You think about all the men who loved men and died on this plantation, men whose names were never recorded, whose graves are unmarked, whose love was erased from history. But you remember, you carry their names, Tacky and Kuffy, Kofi and Kwame, Ebo and Kwasi, Chukwu and Ike, Adeola and Bamidele, men who loved across impossible distances, who held on to each other when everything else was taken, who refused to let slavery destroy their capacity for love. You say their names aloud, all of them. It takes a long time. When you finish, you feel lighter. You have done what you needed to do. You have kept them alive. As long as one person remembers, they are not truly gone. You die 3 weeks later, in August 1820. You are 47 years old. You have been enslaved for 24 years. You die quietly, in your sleep, in the barracks you have lived in for more than 2 decades. Chukwu and Kwaku find you in the morning. They dig your grave next to Kofi's. They plant a mango seedling. They say your name, Kwame, born on a Saturday, husband to Kofi, survivor of the Sally, keeper of names, beloved. The plantation continues without you. It always does. People die and the plantation continues. That is its nature. That is its cruelty. But you are free now. Free in the only way that matters. Free from the pain, the labor, the endless suffering. And wherever the dead go, you hope Kofi is there. You hope he has been waiting. You hope you get to hold his hand again in a place where no one can separate you, where no overseer can whip you, where no planter can sell you. You hope. The historian Sawanda Mustaqim, whose work on the experiential reality of the Middle Passage helped shape our understanding of saltwater kinship networks, wrote that the intimate bonds formed during the voyage, bonds of love, friendship, and chosen family, were acts of resistance that persisted long after landing. These bonds were not just emotional, they were survival mechanisms, networks of mutual aid and support that helped people endure the unendurable. When we look at plantation records and see men who lived together for decades, who were understood by their communities to be partners, who mourned each other publicly and deeply, we are seeing the legacy of those shipboard connections. We are seeing love that survived the Middle Passage. Some of those partnerships were between men. We know this because occasionally the evidence survives. A letter, a diary entry, a court record, an overseer's complaint. But most of the time the evidence does not survive. Most of the time these men disappear into the silence of history, their names unrecorded, their relationships erased, their love treated as if it never existed. But it did exist. They were real. They loved each other in the holds of slave ships and in the barracks of plantations and in the provision grounds on Sunday afternoons. They married each other in ceremonies that had no legal standing, but were witnessed by communities who understood and respected those bonds. They survived together, they died together, and they deserve to be remembered. The Middle Passage ended in 1807 for British ships, but the slave trade continued under other flags until the 1860s. Millions of people were transported from Africa to the Americas over the course of 4 centuries. At least 12 million. Possibly 15 million. We will never know the exact number. We will never know most of their names. But we know they existed. We know they suffered. We know some of them loved each other when love should have been impossible. And we know that love was an act of resistance. Every time 2 people chose each other in the hold of a slave ship, every time they held hands in the dark, every time they whispered each other's names, when they thought no one was listening, they were refusing to let slavery destroy their humanity. They were insisting, against all evidence, that they were still people, that they still deserved love, that they were more than cargo, more than property, more than the value assigned to them in a ledger. The system tried to break them. It broke their bodies. It broke their families. It broke their connection to their homelands. But it could not break the fact that they loved. And that is what we remember tonight. Not just the suffering. Though we must remember the suffering, we must never forget what was done to these people. But also the love. The quiet, fierce, indestructible love that survived in the worst circumstances imaginable. Kofi and Kwame were real. The plantation records from Barbados confirm it. 2 men purchased together in 1796, listed as Kofi and Kwamino in the ledgers, living on the same estate for years. The records do not tell us they were partners. The records do not tell us they loved each other. But the records confirm they existed, They were there. They survived together until one of them died. And that is enough. The rest we can imagine. The rest we must imagine, because no one bothered to write down the interior lives of enslaved people. No one thought their love stories mattered enough to preserve. But they mattered. They mattered to the people who lived them. They matter to us now. Because when we remember these men, when we say their names, when we tell their stories, when we honor their love, we are doing what the plantation owners never did. We are recognizing their humanity. We are insisting that they were people, not property. We are keeping them company across the centuries, the way they kept each other company in the hold of the Sally. For most of history, these men were alone. They wrote letters no one would read. They loved in rooms no one would visit. Their names were recorded in ledgers as units of economic value and nothing more. But tonight, we are here with them. We are listening to their stories. We are saying their names out loud. And that matters. It does not undo the horror. It does not bring them back. But it refuses to let them be forgotten. If you are listening to this late at night, alone in your own dark room, you are part of that act of witness. You are keeping them company. You are saying, I see you. I know you existed. Your love mattered. And that is the most powerful thing we can do for people who were systematically erased. We can refuse to let the erasure stand. We can insist that they were here. They were real. They loved. They mattered. So as you drift off tonight, think about Kofi and Kwame. Think about two men holding hands in the belly of a slave ship, choosing each other when choice should have been impossible. Think about their wedding on a provision ground in Barbados, witnessed by friends who understood exactly what it meant to choose love in a place designed to destroy it. Think about 13 years of survival, of waking up next to each other, of stolen moments under a mango tree, of a marriage that had no legal standing but was more real than most marriages that did. Think about the fact that they are not unique. They are representative. For every Kofi and Kwame whose names survived in a ledger, there were thousands whose names did not survive. Thousands of men who loved men in the holds of slave ships, in plantation barracks, in the brief moments of privacy they could steal from a system that wanted to own every second of their lives. Those men existed. Their love existed. And we remember them tonight. Even though we do not know their names, the mango trees are still there, in a way. Not the literal trees Kwame planted. Those are long gone, the provision grounds long since reclaimed and built over. But the act of planting them matters. The act of marking a grave, of saying a name, of refusing to let someone disappear, that act echoes forward through time. We are doing that tonight. We are planting trees. We are saying names. We are refusing to let Kofi and Kwame and Tacky and Cuffy and all the unnamed men who loved men on slave ships disappear into silence. They were here. They loved. They survived as long as they could. And when they died knowing they had been loved, which is more than this world owed them, but exactly what they deserved. May your dreams be free of ships and chains and overseers. May you wake tomorrow in a world they never got to see. A world where two men can love each other openly. Where marriage is a rite and not a secret ceremony, witnessed by friends in a provision ground. Where no one can sell you away from the person you love. That world exists because people fought for it. Some of those people were enslaved men who insisted on loving each other anyway, who refused to let slavery destroy their capacity for connection, who survived together and died together and left behind a legacy of resistance written in the language of love. Sleep well in the world they made possible, and when you wake, remember their names. Good night, and sleep well.